During the summer of 1970, the Flying Scotsman was in the midst of its second leg of its tour of the USA. This leg would take the engine from Slayton, Texas up into Toronto, Canada. Here we see the train making its way east as we follow it across Missouri. The train meets a westbound freight as it continues east to St. Louis on the former Wabash-St. Louis line. The Flying Scotsman is an A1 Class 462 Pacific constructed by the Doncaster Works of the London and Northeastern Railway in 1923, named after the LNER's famous non-stop express train running from London north to Edinburgh in Scotland. Very early on in the engine's life, it became a prominent figure in the public eye of Britain, having been on display at the 1924 British Empire Exhibition. From there, the engine went on to star in its own feature film, Flying Scotsman, a Warner Brothers feature released in 1929. With dynamometer equipment attached to the locomotive and train on November 30th, 1934, the Flying Scotsman again raced into history as the first locomotive to have officially done 100 miles per hour. History has stated that this could have been done by the city of Truro beforehand on May 9th, 1904. However, its timing of a stopwatch between mileposts versus dynamometer testing equipment. So when eliminating the human factor that was done with City of Truro's timing, Flying Scotsman was the first locomotive on paper to have officially mathematically reached the speed of 100 miles per hour. The engine continued in service through the war and in January of 1947 was upgraded to the Class A3, receiving a new 225 psi boiler equipped with the elongated banjo dome, as well as upgraded valves and cylinders. The engine was retired in 1963 and was purchased by British businessman Alan Pegler for £3,000 after 18 months of negotiations with British Railways. During his ownership, the engine received a second tender for added water capacity and was restored to its classic LNER apple green livery. After the end of mainline steam in Britain in 1968, it was decided between Pegler and the British government to take the Flying Scotsman over to the United States and Canada for a tour to promote British exports. To meet United States Federal Railroad requirements, a pilot, bell, chime whistle, and large headlight were added to the engine, with the tour commencing in Boston on September 28, 1969. After the successful first tour in 1969, a second tour was planned for 1970. However, with the British government backing out of supporting the tour, Alan Pegler had to turn to funding the tour on his own. By the time of these sequences, the tour is operating on a very tight budget, as they head for St. Louis for a one-week layover and display stop. Here, approaching 80 miles an hour, we can see what Gresley's three-cylindered thoroughbred Pacifics were all about. With a prevalent three-cylinder beat, the engine accelerates out of St. Charles and across the Missouri River into St. Louis. Pegler continued funding the tour and running his engine in the United States until 1972. However, by 1973, the Flying Scotsman had been liquidated from his ownership. Fortunately, this story has a happy ending, as the engine was saved by Sir William McAlpine and repatriated to Britain. Then, after going to Australia in the late 1980s and setting yet another record for the longest non-stop run by a steam locomotive in 1989, the popularity only continues to grow. Flying Scotsman was purchased by the National Railway Museum in 2004, and after a 10-year overhaul being completed in 2016, the engine continues to operate and prove itself as one of the most famous steam locomotives in the world.